properly. Mathuri?
The best way to say it is Mathuri. So
Mathuri.
like mother with an E at the end.
Mathuri. Mathuri.
Yes.
And your last name, how do you say that?
Santhi Morgan.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, just
Mathuri.
Morgan is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
it's easier probably.
I'm very fortunate to be interviewing Mathuri Santa Morgan. Now, Mathuri, tell me about your journey, because you were doing some fabulous things in Australia.
Thank you, Mai. It's an interesting journey. My background is Sri Lankan, but I was born in Malaysia, where Sri Lankans are still very much in the minority over there. My parents encouraged me to come to Australia and, you know, really sort of have my career take off here.
So how old were you when you went to Australia?
I was 29. And I worked, I was transferred out to Sydney, where I worked on business education events for the mining, manufacturing and engineering sector, very male-dominated sectors. And being an Asian woman in a white male-dominated sector is certainly an eye-opening experience.
I'm sure, and they probably had no idea why you were there.
No.
Did they think you were part of the secretarial staff, the cleaning staff?
Yes, that would actually be at the good end. On the bad end, they would think that I was there for show or something like that, when I had in fact curated the entire event and had my team work on it as well. So there was a lot of barriers to overcome in that sector, and you had to be very hard to overcome it.
Well, it's interesting, because once again, listen to the theme, constantly underestimated.
Yes.
So how did you overcome that?
I think you have to develop a very thick skin. You have to develop a very thick skin. I was also one of only 2 female directors in the organization that was largely white and male. So internally and externally you face that. But I think consistent results, consistently outperforming yourself, success is the best revenge, I feel.
Yes.
And we had tremendous success in that portfolio. But throughout this entire journey, the one thing that resonated with me was how hard women had to fight, so much harder than men, particularly women of color, to be recognized. You had to consistently outperform to be given half the recognition a male would. And that's when I knew that my journey had to be in changing that for all women, particularly women of colour.
So coming to New Zealand and seeing what you saw last night with the launch of SUPERdiverse WOMEN, where do you think the countries are comparably in terms of their approaches to SUPERdiverse WOMEN?
I think New Zealand is streets ahead of Australia.
Really?
Streets ahead. I think Australia could learn so much from New Zealand for our younger neighbour and our smaller neighbour.
Why is that? Do you think that's because we've had a larger indigenous population? Do you think that's partly it, or is that because we've just had a very super diverse population?
I think it's both. And I think New Zealand, being younger and more progressive, I draw parallels with Canada versus the US, for example. You've worked so much harder on the integration of society at every level. In Australia, there's still that collective conscience that Australia is predominantly a white male country. And although that's changing, it's not changing at the rate that it needs to be. And I think for that reason, that's why your presentation at Women Will Change has resonated. The Australian audience is not used to being talked to like that, May.
Well, you know, I didn't do anything that I didn't usually do.
Yeah.
I just put it straight to them, which is that, you know, they need to come into the 21st century.
Yeah.
And so tell me, when you look into the future of how we bring the message to Australasia, how do you think we can best achieve that for diverse women?
I think exactly like how you delivered it. I think the thing about Australia is that we tend to still veer in political correctness at forums, at summits, and part of curating Women Will Change was to cut through all of that and be honest, and I think you delivered that level of honesty that they needed to hear. Because I think we can't pussyfoot around the issue anymore. Australia is changing as a country, it's changing as a culture. Now we're at a crossroads. We can either go to the extreme right-wing conservative, as we've seen happen in other key Western democracies, or we can change and allow our economy to flourish by accepting that diversity, by capitalizing on it, by capitalizing on the innovation that comes with it. And I think the time is critical now, because we're really at that cusp of which way does Australia go now.
Fantastic. Well, you're going to be at the forefront of that. So tell me about Women World Changes.
So Women World Changes was originally conceived with one key focus that I had, an honest dialogue. I was really tired of the rah-rah women leadership conferences I'd attended a few. I found that I got very little out of it. the case was to make businesses understand why diversity is already here and how do we capitalize on that. Now the first, obviously, hurdle that we need to address is gender diversity. We're still not seeing that. Australia is still light years behind numerous countries in Asia and even Africa.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so I said, now how do we go about curating really honest dialogue, and who are these women who are really spearheading that? And I looked for them 5 years, and I'm really lucky that I found them. And then once they saw what the potential was of this event, a lot of women started coming to us to say, I wanted to be a part of it. And we really, for an inaugural event, did, I think, pretty well, but I think there's so much more to be done. And your presentation, I think in particular, took us to that level that we need to go for this year.
And then I think we need to go then beyond that.
Yes.
And to say that that's really just the start of refreshing what diversity means in the 21st century.
Absolutely.
We need to become much more sophisticated in how we approach it, Mathuri, because I think the difficulty here is that everybody says, oh, well, we can only cope with one thing. We can only cope with, Anglo-Saxon women.
Yes.
We couldn't possibly cope with some of the women who are now in SUPERdiverse WOMEN, who actually are coloured.
Mm-hmm.
They might be indigenous, and they're women and they're lesbian. I mean, I just think that would be very, very difficult to overcome.
And I think it's also a lot harder in Australia to find these women, because the other converse challenge we have is that some super diverse women don't want to be created distinct to other women.
They're just still trying to pretend they're just like everybody
Yes,
else, are they?
yes.
Because it's such a point of a disadvantage.
Exactly, and it's, well, we spent years trying to align ourselves with the general majority. Now, why would you want to point out those differences? Well, the simple answer is because you are different. And when you walk into a boardroom with a, male CEO who's over 65, he doesn't look at you like everybody else. So it's pointless pretending that you are, but embrace that and learn how to work with that to your best advantage.
I'm so inspired, and I'm very fortunate because I'm going to be working with Mathuri. I spoke at one of your conferences last year. She's a class act, and I think that instead of inviting other speakers, I think you need to speak. Is there anything you want to say finally about the future and about how we change the world?
I think all things considered, and if you look at the political landscape at the moment, it can be looked at a very dismal time. But I think, May, I see women like you. I meet so many inspirational women, not necessarily those who are CEOs of organizations, but, working mothers, working 2 jobs to look after their 4 children, single moms. And there are so many, what I call sheroes out there. And that, to me, is the real critical mass, not the right-wing conservative men who are holding desperately onto their positions of power. But I feel that in the wake of all this, dismal, dreary political landscape, there's so much hope that I can see, and now is that time for that change. So congratulations to you for spearheading this, I think, revolution.
Well, it is a revolution, and most importantly, the time is right. Thank you.
Thank you, May.